Okay. So, good morning, dear board members, staff, and TAs, and everyone observing online. And dear friends, welcome to the ISEC for the last day of the September IESBA board meeting. Today we will be ready by lunchtime, so it's going to be quite a shorter day. I hope you enjoyed the dinner last night in that spectacular setup. I think it was a good way of almost finishing the week in Lisbon for those who will leave soon. But I hope that you are still fresh and with some energy for the discussions this morning, and they are not less important. So let's go. We will start right now. We are missing still Ken and Linda and Rui. There was a meeting this morning with IAIS, the Insurance Association, International Insurance Association. They asked us to present on private equity. They saw the staff alert and they wanted the presentation on that. So they are busy. They will join shortly. But we will start right now. And we will start by going back to the firm culture and governance viewpoints. The staff worked over the week to make some adjustments, tweaks, and etc. to try to accommodate what the board, the product of the discussion earlier this week. And so I'm going to give the floor to Laura now for a short presentation so that we can discuss afterwards. Laura, thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the slides. So as you recall, we spent a lot of necessary time on Tuesday discussing the viewpoints. So Joanne and I are now going to present the rest of the materials, which is the preliminary plan with the project team's proposal for other supporting materials and initiatives, apart from the viewpoints themselves. As you can see on the slide, this preliminary plan, this proposal covers the period through second quarter of 2026, so next year, and at which time the IESBA is scheduled to deliberate the way forward on the FCG framework. This plan that we will now present, of course, will be updated to reflect the board discussions at this meeting and at the December meeting. And so starting with the objectives of this preliminary plan, the project team put together the plan with objectives in mind. We want the FCG project top of mind for stakeholders. So on the one hand, we plan to do this by keeping the momentum of everything this project has generated so far, in particular providing some sort of continuation to the viewpoints. For instance, we have the field testing, the viewpoints in practice, practical guidance on applying viewpoints in firms. And on the other hand, we also want to be developing new materials and initiatives that can increase stakeholder engagement and collaboration around the FCG project. And last but not least, we also see this proposed plan as a way to gather further feedback and information that can better inform the IESBA deliberation in June next year about whether to develop an FCG framework. So starting with the first other supporting material / initiative that aims to continue the viewpoints, one of our proposals is to do a pilot test. And this is basically to test with firms. So it's focused on the viewpoints, and it's for us to test with firms if they understand the principles in the viewpoints, whether firms think that those principles work for firms and how, for us to understand what the challenges are for firms when they try to apply the principles. Is there any principle that is not actionable? What benefits can the principles generate for firms? And this initiative can also help our thinking in terms of the approach to developing the framework once we get there next year. So in terms of this initiative, we're thinking about involving a larger firm, potentially from the Big Four, maybe a mid-sized firm as well. And the target would be a local firm, but of course with the clearance from the respective global firm. We're also in the process of thinking and deciding whether to pilot test all the viewpoints or just a few of them. Maybe some viewpoints with one firm, maybe other viewpoints with a different firm. So there's a lot of things that we are still considering at this point. So we would very much appreciate the board's feedback, not only on the initiative, but on these kind of questions as well. In terms of logistics, we are thinking about doing the planning in Q4 this year in terms of socializing the viewpoints, collecting feedback, finding a firm or firms that would be willing to participate in this pilot test, and then to start in Q1 next year after the viewpoints have been finalized and approved.
Okay. So just to recap, on Tuesday, we discussed the project team's approach to drafting the viewpoints. So finding that balance again between being principles-based and high level as well as actionable. So part of the project team's plan is to build on these viewpoints by developing practical guidance that can help firms understand how the viewpoint principles can apply in practice within their own firms. This could take the form of good practices, case studies, success stories. And again, going back to Tuesday, this is where the how would come in. The plan is to collaborate closely with stakeholders when developing the material, such as working with firms on examples of firm practices. In terms of format, we're thinking potentially beyond the written text, so using more visual and interactive elements, such as interviews, webcasts, and fireside chats. And then based on the discussions we've been having this week, we're proposing to bring a more detailed plan for these supporting materials in terms of timeline, output at the December board meeting. On this slide, we've listed some of the other supporting materials and initiatives that the project team is proposing through the end of the second quarter of 2026. The first being the release of the recording of the panel discussion on ethical culture that we had at the IESBA conference, which we're planning to release in the next several months or so. The project team is also proposing to prepare supporting material that will highlight how provisions in the extant code address the principles set out in the viewpoints. And the proposed release date for the supporting material is Q1 of 2026, again, after the viewpoints are finalized. And finally, we are proposing to develop supporting material on the linkages between the viewpoints and the relevant provisions in ISQM1 as it relates to the QM practices of firms that perform audit and other assurance engagements. We'll be working closely with the IESBA liaison team on this, and the proposed release date of this is Q2 2026, again, after the viewpoints are finalized. On the next two slides, we will quickly cover potential supporting materials that the project team has considered and discussed internally, but proposes not to proceed with at this stage. With regards to PEI, a reminder that a couple months ago, the IESBA issued a staff alert highlighting the key ethical matters that accounting firms should pay attention to when considering PEI. And this included some preliminary considerations on the potential impact of PEI on the ethical culture of a firm. At this time, the project team believes it's premature to develop any further supporting material on the topic of PEI, given one, its evolving nature, and that two, it's too early to assess the longer term impact of PEI on firms, again, at this point in time. Instead, the project team's proposal is to highlight in the overarching viewpoint the importance of ethical culture, regardless of ownership structure. And in addition, we will coordinate with the EIOC, which will continue to monitor developments regarding PEI and determine whether any further actions should be taken under the FCG workstream.
So in addition to what Joanne just mentioned, there's another material that the project team considered and also discussed with the board advisors. All of this was discussed obviously with the board advisors. We also considered the possibility of conducting a survey of firms to further explore ethical culture issues that impact firms and or their existing practices on one or more of the FCG elements. And the project team does recognize that survey results provide additional information and could support the development of the FCG project. But the project team also acknowledges that a survey may not generate the amount or the type of feedback that would be useful. For instance, because we end up having a small sample size, or the information that ends up being provided to us would be insufficient or incomplete. And also bearing in mind that the project team already intends to engage with firms and other stakeholders when developing best practices and case studies, as Joanne explained previously. So for all these reasons, the project team proposes to not conduct a survey for now. And so this was just a brief explanation. We would now open the floor for comments from the board to just get some feedback on this plan and the questions that we mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, project team. This was the part of the presentation that was made on Monday, but there wasn't time for that. And it's a very important part of the work of the FCG project team, because it's about how we to receive the necessary feedback and inform stakeholders appropriately. And I'm tempted to remind about the discussions yesterday during the workshop on the SMART, at least in our group, about everything that we said about the need about to be clear, communicate properly all along the way, or all along the journey of the development of a project, accommodating the feedback properly, gather evidence, etc. So at least in my group, there was a very significant discussion about the many elements of a proper engagement with stakeholders for good results. So this should be part of it, and I'd like to have the board members to have that in mind when discussing this plan, which is a substantive plan. But of course, we need your input. Mark, please.
Thank you. I think really sort of following on from the discussion we had the other day, you know, sort of now is the time to sort of get on with it and test out the sort of proof of concept. So I do think that the plan that you've got, you know, it looks that it will cover all of the things that we need to do. I suppose I've got sort of 2 points to keep in mind as you go through the engagement, or as the team goes through the engagement. The first is, and it sort of goes back to part of the discussion that we had, we've got something here that's a new output from an IESBA perspective, and it's not standards, but because it's new, there's a risk that it will be seen as creating requirements. So how do we balance that tension? And I think it would be really good to go out and, you know, be on the front foot in the stakeholder engagement and, you know, seek views on how we do that. The other thing, and I expect we will get it, because I hear some noises already sort of from firms when I have conversations, is people are asking questions perhaps because they're uncertain of how does this proposal fit in with what firms are doing under ISQM1? And I'm not saying we need to have something written down and thought through, but it would be really helpful if the project team were to sort of mull that one over, so that if you get asked, and I'm sure you will, you've got an answer for it already. But otherwise, I think, you know, I'm very happy with the proposal.
Thank you, Mark. And again, your point is about clarity of communication and consistency of the messages. So I'll get back to that topic, but before that, I'd like to listen to board members and expect you to be as active as you have been, because this is an important part of the project. David, please.
Thank you, Chair. So my immediate reaction is I like this a lot better than what we talked about earlier this week. I think you've really incorporated the feedback. So I particularly like, as Mark said, and I agree with him, we need to do pilots, we need to get feedback. Just, I think, probably stating the obvious, but I think it's probably helpful just to remember that we choose a good cross-section of examples not just one segment of a firm type. So perhaps a couple of smaller geographies, perhaps a couple of smaller practices or medium practices as well would be really helpful, not just the big ones in that sense. The other thing that struck me is similar to Mark, part of what I wondered, and I've been thinking about this since we talked about it earlier this week, when we provide this interpretive guidance, it's almost like we're providing an interpretation of what the standard would tend to indicate would be appropriate in a given situation or a given circumstance. I'm not uncomfortable with that because I think that's the reality of what we do. It's the value that we provide around what it means relative to the fundamental principles we have. So I agree with Mark, we should be cautious, although I'm not worried. We just need to be very thoughtful about what it looks like and how we frame it, because it becomes a precedent for what we do potentially in other projects or in other guidance. So I think just keeping that in mind, because you are the trailblazers in that sense, it would be helpful to keep that front and center. And then the last comment I'll have actually is something that came to me from yesterday's session when we talked about format types. And one of the types that we're not using yet, but could actually be incredibly helpful, is infographics. So using some kind of infographic where you can almost storyboard the journey and very visually as well. So it's got a combination of visual and word. So it tends to tap into multiple ways of absorbing information. Might be another good way to do it because it's succinct, it's to the point, but it's also clear in its message. Thank you.
Thank you, Javid, and thank you for coming with additional suggestions. I'll just, before I give the floor to Amajit and others who I hope will contribute, ask you about something specific in this presentation, because it's something about which we were expecting or willing to have some feedback and a guidance from the board, which is this idea of field testing. Go out with something and test it in the field with a pilot or whatever other format is. We have been discussing this internally intensively, but I think that we need the board to look at that possibility and share if you are comfortable with a possible approach. And there is no promises, because this can be very difficult to put in place. Just to start, it requires firms or other stakeholders to be volunteers to do something like that. There are many ways we can do that. There is already some work done, but of course, before starting, we need to have the feedback from the board if this is a good idea or a bad idea. And if it's a bad idea, of course, we should stop now. If it's a bad idea, a good idea, we can move forward or at least continue exploring the best ways to do it. Amajit, please.
One very small point, and taking a cue from what Mark mentioned about linkages with ISQM. So I note from the agenda 2B, there's a mention about developing supporting materials on linkages between the viewpoints and ISQM1. So my suggestion would be, while we do that, we also highlight the gaps. That will actually very clearly show what is the value add of this project. ISQM is not good enough, and that is why we are doing it. So in a very positive, constructive way, we should highlight how this can work very well with ISQM. Actually, it will be a substantial value add to that. So I think that's a way how we should present it, and also analyze from the gaps analysis point of view.
Thank you, Amajit. Yohei, please.
One thing is that Amajit touched upon that regarding ISQM1, it is important having supporting materials on the linkage between viewpoint and ISQM1. So I look forward to working closely with IWSB to develop clear and specific materials. And the other thing is that regarding PE investment, and in PE investment, short-term and medium-term profits are emphasized. So there is a concern that such management policies may affect the culture, governance, and the independence of the firms. So they're required to maintain the high quality audit service and the high ethical standard for the public interest. So it's important to continue to explore the impact and take necessary steps. In doing so, it is useful to have a dialogue with key stakeholders, and the other thing IESBA can do is to obtain feedback from the actual state of the PE investment from jurisdictions where PE investment is increasing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yohai. Jeff?
Thank you, Gabrielle. I just want to quickly just respond to Amajit's and Yohai's point in terms of the linkage to ISKM1, particularly Amajit. Yes, I think it's a good idea at this stage, just listening to you in terms of exploring the gaps, but I think we also need to be clear that some firms will have no ISKM1 whatsoever. So, and also our project is beyond the audit and assurance space. So even if an audit firm has implemented ISKM1, it may not be a firm-wide thing. So the gaps is potentially and we don't want to give the wrong perception either that if you have implemented ISKM1 to your audit assurance, then that's all you need. So, but we will explore that. I think that's a fantastic idea, but we want to make sure that we don't give the wrong perception to our stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Rania, please.
Thank you. So concerning the field testing, I like the idea, but I'm just wondering how the field test may be designed so as to avoid. I mean, I'm trying to think further down the line, whether for whatever reason we might be criticized, for example, for the choice of the field test or for example, the choice of the sample size, the choice of the pilot, so that the ultimate results are not somehow perceived to have been biased, or you get my point. So I really like the idea. I just think we need to really think it through in the sense that how we choose the partners to pilot with concerning the field test, and so as to avoid criticism further down the line for whatever reason.
Okay, Rania, thank you for sharing those concerns. Of course, there can be always criticism about anything, but of course, we need to be aware of everything. And the question here, and this is a proposal from the project team and from, to the board, which may or may not first receive support, secondly, be possible to put in place. So we are in a very preliminary phase, even if, as I said, some work has already been done. And if anything, Canon and or Rui can provide any further information about what we have been discussing, the possibilities, and etc. Now, if that is a possibility, and if the board thinks that it might help, then we will start exploring the best way to do it. And of course, the best way to do it will be addressing all those risks in the best way possible and doing it very professional. This is a pilot is exactly that. You select something and you try to understand how it would work in practice. What are the obstacles? What the usefulness, and etc. That's the purpose of a pilot, or call it a different thing. Call it a sandbox or whatever. This is something that's being is consistently used in the, for instance, financial system, with all these new regulations for blockchain, for technology, and etc. Because it's new and you need to test it. It's a little bit the same spirit here. It's something new for us, new for the firms, and maybe because we are committed again. And I'm going back to the SMART and to what we committed to do, because we are committed to collect evidence, connect closely with the stakeholders, try to understand what things mean in practice, not take them by surprise, etc. This might be one way, together with all the others that the project team mentioned, of communicating properly and gathering for us conclusions and information which might help then shape the future. Very high level considerations at this point in time, but you know, field testing is something that it's in our due process, right, Ken, as a way to do this. Probably we haven't done it before very frequently, but that doesn't mean that we can't do this this time. But again, because we haven't been doing this and it's something relatively new for us, which will, if we do it, require a very professional approach to the way we do it. We need the board to be comfortable or not comfortable, so that the project team and we know what to do. But thank you for raising that, because of course there are risks and we need to be aware of that. Nancy, please.
I wanted to go back to perhaps a bit more tactical, and Jeff, in response to your comments, which I fully agree with about the objectives of what we're doing with firm culture and governance. Having said that, I certainly, and I imagine others are also hearing the same thing, is a significant amount of question from, in particular, the PAPP community about how firm culture and governance interacts with ISQM1. I feel very comfortable in being able to articulate, Jeff, exactly the same point you made, that there are firms that don't have audit practices or assurance practices, and therefore, you know, they don't have that same kind of framework and analysis that they have to go through. And then even within firms, most firms are multidisciplinary and are going to have tax and other advisory services for which firm culture and governance is going to have a broader umbrella over it. So while I feel very comfortable, the fact that I would say, having ongoing discussions about this, and even with people where I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it 3 times, I think we need to be cognizant that this is going to be an ongoing conversation, and that you'll have waves of people becoming aware from culture and governance. So I do think that we need to be very thoughtful about making sure that we have ongoing messaging about how the firm culture and governance project interacts, and I believe complements ISQM1. And I will say very specifically, one of the conversations, and I was in this twice in meeting preparation coming into this meeting this week, was questions about, well, are the viewpoints quality objectives? Are they quality responses? Are they required? And so just from the way people who work with system quality management kind of think about these things, is that we might have to think about how that language is used so that we can translate, if you will, how that might parallel within firm culture and governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Sadia, please.
So I think pilot testing, field testing is an interesting idea. It's one that would gain us more insight than we have previously. My greatest caution is probably on the timing of when we ask for field testing. My understanding is that we usually do it when we have concrete ideas and it's clear and understandable. And that usually comes after an exposure draft. From the viewpoints that we have currently, and we have 8 viewpoints, that's the other thing, the scope of the field testing. Are we going to ask people to field test all 8, which would be resource intensive, or would we ask them to test one at a time? So that's some of the consideration that the project will to please consider. I think the main thing I would be interested in knowing is, have we reached out to anyone, and if we have any buy-in for people to actually volunteer for this year, because of the resources, and some of these will not be implementable in a short period of time. It might take time and considerations and difference in structures. So those are things that we probably want to pay attention to. I don't want to say I am for it because of what this might create for outcomes. Can only be for it until I know what the remit of field testing would be like. And maybe the other question would be, have we ever done field testing before as IESBA? And do we have any lessons learned from that previous practice to improve upon our processes?
Thank you very much, Sadia. That's a question that Ken will be probably in a better position to respond. I don't know if you want to speak now or speak it. Okay. Okay, so Ken will be in a better position than I am to respond to that question. So, Nessa, do you still want to speak? No. Okay. Christelle, please.
Thank you, Chair. Also on this field testing idea, what do we want to test? The implementability or the efficiency? If it's the implementability of some viewpoints, then okay, we have a return on the difficulties, the pitfalls, etc., and we can share an experiment. But this is not demonstrating the strongness of the framework we propose. It's just explaining and sharing the difficulties on the road. If it is the efficiency, that's a lot more complex to test. It's you have to have the idea about of how you are going to test this efficiency, if that is the objective. If it is not, it is a little bit well. We issued very complex standards. We did not do field testing. We supported implementation and supported and shared the difficulties. And within our outreach, we share with other stakeholders, etc. But we did not before asking, for example, for the tax planning standard implementation, field testing. Our diverse horizon helped us evaluate the consequences of what we ask, and also balance between the objective on the ethical level and the difficulties that we include in our standard. But and now we want to do field testing on something which is quite, less of a technical culture, is something which is quite difficult to test. You need more than one tool. You need a lot of time. It's not, okay, you've put something in place with bonuses or promotions or whatever, and then the year after you know how to test if people are happier, have best practices, etc. So you see, it's difficult to, and I think we should be clear in our mind, what are we going to test? Do we know how we can test, and if it's going to be credible? Thank you.
Thank you, Christelle, and well heard the concerns, and of course also from Sati, but I'll come back to that. About the need to be clear about what to field test. I think that probably the word field testing may bias a little bit. But it's what's in our due process. That's why we are using it, because the idea of a pilot, that's probably more clearer. Again, the question is not specifically about field testing or pilot. The question is really that this project is different. So I don't think personally that we can just do more of the same. And the fact is that we have been working on this for 1.5 years or 1 year, 9 months, and there is still this idea that it's not clear, they don't know, etc. So we need to find ways. We need to find ways to come to somewhere where we have all the information, the practical information, but also give all the information. And that's what we are looking for. So different ways of achieving this objective, because clearly just go out and speak to people it's not enough. It's good, it's fine, but it's not enough, at least in the way we usually do it. So pilot, anything, but the idea is that we need to, or we should at least try to find something, a way of working over the next few months with these viewpoints, which is not that just ask people for meetings and say, here is the viewpoint, what do you think? Do you see, Christelle? So I'm not pushing, and I think that we are not pushing for a pilot or whatever. It was an idea that came to the table, like one way of trying to see if this might work or might not, what works, what is useful, what is not useful. They already have it, these kind of things. But any other ideas are very welcome. Okay. No, not yet, Ken? Okay, so you still have David Ray, sorry, Hector and Tomayo.
There. So maybe just thinking about what Christelle and what Sadia said, a helpful way perhaps to think about it is to determine if we fast forward ahead to the end of the project, what is it we hope to be able to do? Is it that we want to provide a framework on what to implement? Or is it that we want to provide a framework on how to implement? So maybe thinking a little bit about what we're trying to achieve, because if I think about a pilot, and we'll call it pilot because I agree it's a nice word at this stage, I think about perhaps learning what different practices do. Like when you say develop an ethical leadership culture, what is it that they do in response to that? What does that look like for a small practice, a medium practice, or a large practice, or a practice in Asia versus Europe versus Americas, for example? So maybe thinking about it like that could give some indication as to what a pilot might be, because then you actually learn what gets done and you also learn how it gets done. And that might be a useful input into whatever framework we think about doing later on. So maybe, I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of what I would imagine happens as a practical and sensible way to get insight. But there was something else I wanted to ask, and I apologize for not asking it earlier. I was reflecting when you were doing the walkthrough of the slides, you mentioned that we would defer a survey. And I know that there are different views within the board. Could you perhaps elaborate a little bit on what you were thinking when you said defer the survey? Thank you.
Thank you, David. I don't know. We'll probably leave these questions to the end. Tomayo. Tomayo, please.
Yeah. I'm supportive of doing the testing of viewpoints because my understanding is that was the viewpoint was intended for. When we do the field testing, I assume that the results will vary by jurisdiction and farms, because like some jurisdiction already have a governance code, and in such jurisdiction, the answer might be yes, it's working, and when there's none, that jurisdiction might say no. And the other angle is global side, like we do this globally in the farm, and so it's working. So I think there will be two angles. The trend will probably reflect that side. So considering, assuming such results, I think when selecting the stakeholders, I think we should bear in mind that that kind of trend might come out. Thank you.
I admit I like the idea of field testing as a way of practice that we should have to test the implementability, the operationality of things that we do. I'm worried about trying this for the first time with this product, the viewpoints. They are so high level, and they are dealing with things that, as Mark mentioned the other day, it will take 3 years to implement in a firm. That how are we going to field test this? We're going to go to one individual firm and say, you should have independent input. And then they're going to spend 1.5 years trying to find a candidate, doing the onboarding, and then they're going to report back to us. It doesn't make sense to me. Sorry.
No, you don't have to be sorry. Thank you, Hector. Amajit.
I'm still thinking, so what is the end game here? I'm just wondering about that. Where do we see ourselves landing? I know the business environment is not very conducive. They don't seem to have much appetite for more standards and so on. While we can do field testing, we can do further stakeholder engagement, we can develop case studies, we can look at success stories. All that is great. I mean, I'm not disputing any of that. But what is the end game? These viewpoints will eventually, I mean, the way I would at least like to see it, as I said the other day also, this viewpoint is you have a hierarchy of standard setting. You start with recommendations, then you have standards, and at the highest level is the principles. And there is always a pushback for principles because that they sit at a very high level. And viewpoint is a new thing which we've added in this hierarchy, which is fine. I mean, I'm not having any strong views on that. But I would encourage all of us to think as we go along. We don't have to answer this question now. It is a very fundamental issue. But we should see within a defined timeline, maybe end of next year, this is where we should graduate from viewpoints to something better. The least I would say is some recommendations. So this would be IESBA recommendations. Take it or leave it. I mean, there's some sort of, and based on very intensive study work done over the last almost 1.5 years or so, and you are going to do more. So just a thought, but I think it's important for the board to have some visibility on where we are going to land on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Amajit. Rich, please.
I think it might be better to take the rest of the board comments because I was going to respond to some of the earlier questions.
Okay, so you want to speak?
Yeah,
right? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Luigi, please.
Thank you. I have some comment with reference to a couple of things, which are very similar. I make reference to what Mark said at the beginning about the rumors about the impact or interconnection with IESBA. The issue, in my view, is also linked to the fact that sometimes we are not very precise in using the word and in explaining what is the purpose and the scope of this project as far as IESBA is concerned. In particular, I make reference to the agenda paper and the presentation, which are precise enough in saying that the purpose would be to make an analysis of the linkages between this project and the IESBA, which is explained also in the agenda papers. And this is, I think, the right way to present this piece of purpose. During the discussion, other words have been used, like this project may complement IESBA or something like that, which is a purpose completely different, and I'm not in agreement with. So I recommend the project team, when engaging the stakeholder, to be very precise about the purpose of this activity with respect to IESBA and in general the reason why this project has been implemented. Otherwise, we can expect a lot of rumors, concerns, issues coming from different understanding that could be the result of not being sufficiently precise and clear in explaining what the project team would like to achieve. In this context, there is also another matter where I think more precision is needed, and it is what project team is intending with the term testing. Because I think, at least I gather different meaning, probably it's me. It could be that I have not the right understanding, so I beg pardon for that. But by reading the agenda paper, I got a clear understanding of what is the purpose, which is holding interview with different stakeholders in order to understand the future-proof or the future implementability, actionability of the viewpoints, while it seems to me that sometime during the discussion, I got the impression that someone is thinking that it is a past view or retrospective view in terms of what has been implemented. Testing actually is something which probably is my bad understanding, and as I also said, but I recommend also in this perspective to be very clear and very consistent with the purpose that has been set in the agenda paper, just to avoid any misunderstanding.
Thank you very much, Luigi. So we have Rich and Ken. You both want to be the last two. Rich, please. No, sorry. Oh, Rania, sorry, I didn't see you.
So I just wanted to say, picking up on my prior point and all the, as a quick reaction to everything that's been said around the table, I want to say that in my view, particularly for all the concerns that have been raised around the table, and particularly given the nature of this project, I strongly support the idea of a field test. I think it could be, in my mind, the objective is to take this document, which we are calling viewpoints, and take it and see how helpful it is for our stakeholders, how helpful it is, how impactful. Can it actually move the needle? Can it actually effectively, make them think about the questions that we want them to think about? And so in my mind, I just want to express my strong support. I think it's an excellent idea, even if we have not done it before. The entire project is something new to us in my mind, and trying to do things different. Let me put it this way. I don't see how it can hurt us besides, the fact that, actually investing the time and effort into it. But again, going back to my prior point, I believe that we should just make sure that we structure it properly. How many field tests? Who are the stakeholders? Just so that the perception is that, it is a valid test, and for us to feel that the results we're getting out of it are actually, meaningful and helping us refine this document and our way forward. Just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rania. Chana, please.
Thank you all for your comments. Maybe I'll deal with the question on IESQM1. When you look at the firms, the audit, like if you look at any country, right? And if I take my own Australia, there are less audit firms than firms who do not do audits, right? Just because you have IESQM1, that's not going to capture the population of firms. So there's probably, 70-80% of the firms who do not do audits, therefore is not captured by ISQM1. Versus, there's tax practices, forensic accounting practices. So not every firm does audits. Then even in firms that do audits, some have told us that ISQM1 is only for the audit practice. Some have said that they have done it firm-wide. So there's variety of methods that they are, implementing ISQM1. And if you look at the actual paragraphs in ISQM1 and then look at the viewpoints, the viewpoints are much broad and, there's very little in respect of culture there. But I fully accept that the firm could have done their quality objectives and quality responses, because remember, each firm can do their own thing in respect of quality objectives and quality responses, that they could have covered these aspects. So if you have already covered it, then you say it's done. So it's not an issue. I think people have to accept that just because ISQM1 doesn't cover the whole population of firms out there, and even in some aspects, not the full firm, because they don't have to. It's a voluntary thing. If a firm wants to cover it, take it from the audit practice and expand it across everything. Then in respect of, what are we trying to achieve? I think a bit like Amajit's question on, what's the final output? And I'm sort of thinking that it could be something like the audit quality framework that the IEESB did maybe 10 years ago or 12 years ago. It's sort of a paper like that. And I know there's some concerns about, I really wouldn't call this NAM, because I think it's even something at a different level. For me, NAM is like the technical staff frequently asked questions where it's hanging off paragraphs of the code and it's trying to explain those. So, I don't know how we segregate it, but I think it's something at a lower level. And if you look at the viewpoints, these are not not even normal organizations should, have similar things. It's, it's not specifically, if you step back and look at the principles, these are good things for even normal companies to think about. It's not, limited to the firms. And then coming back to the, the survey, I think Rich, I'll let Rich speak. We might have sort of slightly different positions. I think it's not a bad idea, but not now. And that's why we say, the project team has said defer, because we have to first finalize the viewpoints. And it may be, a survey might not be a bad idea to see, okay, what are people out there actually doing under each of these elements, and get some information. And then we can cover, different countries, geographies. If we come up with a survey, and we should sort of have it in a way that it doesn't take them a lot of time. To Sadhya's point, can we do a couple? I don't know, because I feel that this is sort of, the things are integrated. The thing that will be challenging will be the independent input, because some countries have not gone there. So that could be a challenge. But some of the others, it's difficult to just look at one aspect because of the interlinkages between some of the elements.
Thank you very much, Chana. Very helpful. So, Rich, you don't want to speak, or you do? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Chana addressed many of the points I was going to reference. So, I just, from my perspective, as we worked on this, started this, and then as an advisor to the project team, this project was never intended to impact, alter, contemplate, complement. I shouldn't say contemplate, complement, link to ISQM1. ISQM1 is a standard that's out there. Has been implemented. People are signing off on their controls, and it applies to the audit and assurance practice. Much of what we heard from stakeholders, both those who urged us to put this on as a project, and as we went through both the first year in the working group and then in the roundtables, is what we had thought at the beginning, which was the focus of this project is really on enhancing the ethical culture across an entire organization or firm, and most especially in those practices and in the leadership approaches as it relates to the non-audit practices. We also were cognizant of there are large numbers of firms that only do tax, that do bookkeeping, or that only do very limited amounts of assurance and have very substantial advisory practices or other practices. And so we've had all kinds of suggestions. People wanted us to cite paragraph after paragraph of ISQM and when this document. That's not what these documents are. These are viewpoints based on what the stakeholders told us and what has been synthesized by the project team. I did suggest, you'll see in the draft, that at some point one of our outputs should be to get with have the IAASB do a joint program with us to explain how it applies to the audit practice, because it doesn't apply, because ISQM doesn't apply to other firms. And while some firms have taken aspects of what they did to meet ISQM1 in the audit practice and extended broadly, which is excellent, many others said they did nothing in that regard. And so I want to be careful. I'm a little concerned that we get sidetracked. We weren't trying to correct or adjust anything in ISQM1. We're trying to deal with the ethical culture and ethics across a whole firm. And we have the ethics standards that we have to deal with. We don't issue quality responses or quality standards in our code. We have ethics and independence. And so we keep running into this, and I think it's important that we do something with the IAASB. I think they've been kind enough to be collaborative with us and provide input. I think that would be useful to users. It will also, hopefully the way we can do that will make it clear that there's a big aspect of this that doesn't have to do with audit. And that's where we have seen some of the worst problems in the profession, is in the non-audit spaces, at least the incidents, as well as the fact that if you look at some specific things, it unfortunately, some of the examples pointed out to us, it happens in both audit and non-audit practices, even though people have tried to implement ISQM1 or have effectively implemented. And we're trying to improve ethical culture and improve ethical behavior. In my mind, in my mind, you do that through communication, reminders, principles. It's hard to create a standard that says what you actually have to do to be ethical. Ethical culture. I'm sorry. So thank you, Chair.
Rich and China, for your comments on this topic of the ISQM1. And I'm sure that after listening to you, and I hope that others are listening too, things are much clearer now, but probably we'll need, as you say, Rich, to do something to make things absolutely clear and avoid any kind of misunderstandings like Luigi has mentioned, and I think Nancy as well. So this is probably a priority. You say shouldn't be because listening to you, it looks obvious, but apparently it's not. So I think it's better to put in somewhere what we have heard now from you two, and make it absolutely clear. So one thing that I haven't heard, but well, we will take the conclusions from the discussions is about the timeline of the initiatives which are being suggested here. I'm now going to go give the floor to Ken. Sorry if you have been waiting for a long time.
Chair, thank you very much. Very interesting discussions, and maybe what I'll do is just share some reflections from what I've heard. And apologies, I missed the early part of the start of the session because Linda and I were just in a session with IEIS, which will report to the board in the executive session. So, just in relation to ISQM1, clearly we've heard a lot being said and raised in terms of questions, concerns, even some anxieties. I think what I would be minded to advise the board is to ask the project team just in order that we can maybe bring down the sort of decibel level around ISQM1, that the project team endeavors to develop a couple of documents that would be illustrative of the linkages between, let's say, two of the viewpoints versus ISQM1. So maybe it's ethical leadership, and maybe it's incentives and rewards, just for purposes of illustration, so that we can bring this back to the board in December to have a discussion. Again, this is illustrative, it's indicative, and we are continuing to have those conversations with IEESB. And Jeff, I don't know if you reported back to the board in terms of some of the questions that have been raised by IEESB in our update session on Tuesday. Again, this question came up again. Again, it's illustrative of the anxieties about not understanding those linkages and what might come out of the viewpoints. So despite all that's been said, in terms of, yes, audit is maybe a smaller part of the universal engagements, services that firms undertake, and even those some sort of audit practices. Audit might be a smaller part of the pie, so to speak. There is that concern. So that's the number one. Number two, just in relation to ISQM as well, we did hear a comment during the IEESB session on Tuesday to the effect that even though ISQM1 applies to audit engagements and related services engagements that are within the scope of the standard, some firms have extended the application of ISQM1 to other engagements outside of audit. So again, there is a perception there that maybe this may not just be an audit-centric issue, and firms that have extended partially or to whatever degree the application of ISQM1 to other areas of their practice outside of audit, well, they will be concerned as well, because if you've already done in a number of the actions to operationalize some of the viewpoints, to achieve some of the outcomes, let's help us understand how those viewpoints are going to be interacting with our standard. With regard to the idea of field testing, clearly the discussion here indicates that there are a number of questions to be further worked through. And maybe I'll start with Christel's comment about, well, is this about the implementability of the viewpoints, or is it about efficiency? And as you mentioned, the concept of efficiency, Christel, the concept of cost and benefits came to mind. if it's about efficiency, or I just wondered whether in fact there is a third aspect or a third dimension here, which is about effectiveness. The effectiveness of the viewpoints in achieving the intended outcomes. Leadership having clearly an impact on the culture, etc. So that could be consideration as well. But that said, the issue of cost benefits is not going to go away, because we've been reminded time and again that this board, before it goes forward with any standard setting, that it is going to be very important to develop the analysis of the costs and benefits to help stakeholders really understand whether, in fact, if there are going to be movement in the direction of standard setting, that this will be justified. When it comes to field testing, also what I heard here, and Hector spoke directly to this issue, which I was going to raise anyway, the issue of the time period. And if the board were to be so minded to undertake field testing, it is going to be very important to agree the time period that this will cover, because if the sense is, well, this board needs to make a decision by next June, let's do a field testing and let's see what firms come back, this is not going to happen. If you ask the firms to field test how they might change their reward system, change compensation strategies, and put in place new approaches to how to reward staff, etc. Independent input. Let's go out to market. Let's pull anybody off the street and see whether we can get traction. This is not going to happen overnight. It won't happen in 3 months' time. It won't happen in 6 months' time. This potentially could be a multi-year project, minimum 2 years, 3 years, to really get meaningful feedback to enable the board to have the evidence and to make the assessment. So the time period is very important. And the what? Amarjit and Rania and others have raised it. Is it field testing on all of the 8 elements and all the viewpoints in there, or should we only field test for illustrative purposes to enable the board to have a good sense as to the operability and the effectiveness of and even efficiency of those viewpoints? Well, let's not try to do everything. Maybe let's road test, kick the tires on only 2 of those elements. Maybe it's ethical leadership, maybe it's education and training. Maybe some viewpoints that may be more amenable to testing, let's say, because some viewpoints might actually take longer, and the firms might really need to invest the time to really think deeply about the questions that would be put in front of them for field testing. So I think there's a lot here to be done, and I don't think the board is on the basis of the questions being raised here in the discussion that there is an answer. Okay, let's go ahead and undertake this field testing, and let's get some answers by next June so that the board is able to make a considered assessment. I think there's more work to be done at the project team level, and maybe what I'd encourage the project team to do is to take on board the discussion here or the input, and to have further reflection on the way forward, and come back to the board in December with some further sort of analysis. Thank you.
Can Jeff, please? Hector?
For clarification, the concept of testing, it means that the product is not official, it's not released. You test something before you sell it in the market. So it means that whatever we do, we wait 3 years to get the results from the field test, and in 3 more years, we issue the viewpoints?
This is a very good question, Hector. And Gabriel mentioned earlier that field testing is an integral part of the due process. Due process is about the draft standards. So I think the context is very important here. The viewpoints are not draft standards at this point. They're not. They are intended to provide a platform for the board to engage with stakeholders about certain articulation of principles that the board has come to, let's say, at this stage, having digested the feedback and develop some synthesis and assessments of those different elements of input. So we're not at this stage yet of having a draft standard. The idea of testing is about kicking the tires. It's trying to understand. I think implementability is given. Are these principles going to be actionable? You know, to use a concept that's very important to understand. But do we go as far as understanding how effective those viewpoints will be, those principles, let's say, in affecting change? You know, somebody mentioned moving the needle, maybe it might have been Sadia. Are these viewpoints going to really make a difference? And if so, then do we build that as an objective for the field testing? So developing and agreeing the purpose of the field testing is going to be very important. And that's why I think there's more work to be done, more thought to be given to what's the objective of the field testing, etc.
Ken, and that's what was said at the start. This was not a proposal whatsoever to start a pilot tomorrow or field testing. It was like hearing from the board if that was an option, would be an option to explore, or if the board was completely uncomfortable and against, and so we would not even go with that possibility. So yes, some more work to be done. I'll conclude on that. But Jeff, you wanted to say something?
One very quick field testing discussion. So one thought which comes to my mind is wherever you don't need to test for everything, each and everything. Some of the things are already tested and you have sufficient evidence in place. I mean, you just need to do some research and find some of the concepts are already tested. So let's not waste time on few things which are already settled. Things which we are proposing new, there, of course, you could probably do some testing and see whether it really works in practice or not. Just a suggestion to make it more efficient.
Thank you very much. Jeff, please. And there was a question, holding question from David on the deferral of the survey, right? Okay.
Thank you, Gabriel. In terms of the survey question, David, I think China had already addressed in terms of, you know, surveys, of course, by nature is generally always a good idea, but we felt that now is maybe not the time to put out those surveys at this point, because there are already a lot of things that we want to work on. But China's already addressed that. I was more just reacting to Ken's suggestions to the project team in terms of putting out a couple of documents on the linkages with ISKM1. I mean, of course, coming into this board meeting, the project team's proposal is only to do those after we have finalized the viewpoints, because then we know what's in it. That's the same in terms of the relevant provisions in the code, a separate document, because it's quite a short turnaround time. But also we need to think about whether producing those documents necessary would bring clarity, because what I've heard from the board is we need to have clear message that it's not just about so much about the linkage, but be clear that this project is not about complementing ISKM1. As what Rich has said, it's about firm culture. It's about whole firm culture. And, you know, the implementation of ISKM1, whether it's through just to the assurance practice, or as what we've heard from that some firms have applied it to the whole firm, whatever that means. You know, some of them might have done that, but I guess my immediate reaction is I'm not sure whether that would necessarily bring clarity. I think the idea of perhaps making sure they have clear messages, it doesn't need to be necessarily producing a couple of documents, but that's just my our thought at this point, but we'll take it back.
And maybe a quick reaction here. The messaging is clear, it's understood. we've heard around the board table here that there is clarity that we need to articulate those linkages. So it's not about, this is not the focus, the purpose of this project to articulate linkages to SQM1, because the focus is to develop a framework to address film culture and governance. That's clear. We can message that as much as we want. But there is ample discussion around the question of linkage to SQM1. We're hearing this from IESBA, we're hearing this from the PIOB, we're hearing this from the firms, and we're hearing this around the board table here. So this is going to be very critical for the project team to address, and we don't need to solve this now, but what I'm putting on the table here is this is work that will need to be done. Whether we like it or not, it's going to be very important to be transparent about how the board sees interaction of those viewpoints and those principles with SQM1. And that is something that we're going to have to work through.
Sorry, if I could just be clear, Ken, we are doing it, but our proposal is doing after the board has approved the viewpoints. But it doesn't mean that we don't continue to connect with firms and give them that understanding. But in terms of
let's engage in a discussion here, Jeff. I just want to make clear that it's not about just a messaging that this is not the purpose of this project, right? We can talk about the timing, the matter of timing, but this needs to be done. That's really what I want to make sure that there's understanding here that, we're hearing a lot of discussion and let's say noise around SQM1, but this is not really the focus of this project. So we can message, but we need to address it.
Jeff and Ken, I'm sorry, Obi Chukwu has asked to make a question. Obi, are you there? Obi Chukwu? Well, I'm going to give the floor to Luigi, who is also waiting, and then we'll come back to see if Obi Chukwu can hear us and
Hello,
speak.
everyone.
Luigi, please.
Hello, everyone.
You. A little bit different matter, but I think that there is a need a coordination of the various projects in terms of timing, because I was reading all the presentation, the updated presentation, that it seems that everything seems to happen in Q1 or January 2026, and I think it may be not reasonable to have to engage the stakeholder for our projects all in the same time. For example, there is one where the survey is to be issued in January 2026. Another project would be in Q1, which is the strategic work plan. This project should happen with the stakeholders' engagement in basically Q1 again. So I think that probably there is a need to further coordination in order to ensure not to have stakeholder or certain stakeholder overwhelmed and really not being in a position to give proper feedback and timely feedback to all these projects all together. I think that probably we should do our best to, let's say, give time to stakeholder to properly work at this project, because all three, I'm referring to these three, are really important. So just a recommendation for each project team to coordinate each other and to make the stakeholder possible to respond in a proper way.
That, Luigi, it's something that we have been hearing sometimes, so we need to be careful. Thank you. Obi Chukwu, I think we need to wait for a few seconds because there is a disconnection in time. So I'll wait a few seconds to see if we can hear Obi Chukwu.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Can you hear? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. So on the FCG and the issue of doing a field test, my own opinion is that based on the viewpoints and on the 8th principle, I think we don't yet have a framework. So if we don't have a framework yet, I think it's too early to start talking about a field testing. And I also feel that as board members, and we can also on our own think it through in your own organization. Do you think that this this is a framework that will move the needle. Like using the word of reach, it said more synthesized. The project team has synthesized what they heard from the stakeholders. So I feel we need to still synthesize further, because from what I can see as a management consultant, what we have is not a framework. So if we are testing it, it should just be almost like what happened with the round table. The feedback we get might not be concrete enough to help us, because when you talk about transparency, ethical leadership, rewards, some people tell you, oh, we are doing that. But if you have a framework that is actually like defined, not really defined, but not too high level, that at the end of the day, it's like it's not really like something you can hold, then the field testing might mean we're going to repeat it again. So I think we need to do more research and get at least something that is close to a framework, based on my own opinion, before we can talk about field testing. Because like some points like independent input, we already know that without a field testing, we already know what it's going to be for some different sizes of practices. So that's my opinion, that we need to work on getting something closer to a framework for field testing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Obichukwu. Luigi, do you want to speak? Okay, okay, I think that we have heard a lot from the board on these proposals about the materials and to produce some initiatives to undertake over the next time to go deeper into this topic of firm culture and governance, gather more information, understand better what we really need to do, but also give a clear understanding to our stakeholders. There are two different things which are connected, which is for ourselves to know more and to our stakeholders to know better what we want to do. I think these are the two things that we need to be having consideration. There was a few possibilities explored of gathering information or getting closer and with better communication with stakeholders. So I think that the decision is not to do, or at least that's what the project team is saying, that not to do the survey. I don't think, and again, we need to be clear, I don't think it's a delay. I think it's a no, because at least with this objective of gathering information to use it in developing the viewpoints, we are not going to do it after. So for now, we can do a survey on any other thing in the future with this project, but I think that for now, it should be clear that the idea is not to do a survey. So with respect to the possible field testing pilot, sandbox, or whatever you want to call it, a prototype or whatever, I think that if I may conclude from what I heard from the board, is that it's not that the board doesn't like it, and some of you like the idea very much, but that the board thinks that we are not ready yet to start thinking about what to do, because we need to have more clarity about the viewpoints or the principles or whatever. They have to be at a higher level, or not a higher level. They have to be something that we can test more concretely. I think that's what I heard. And there are concerns about the timing and what exactly we are going to, we would be going to pilot. So my proposal is that as we go and develop the viewpoints further, when we have something closer to ready, that we resume this conversation and see if there is something that we should, can, and want to do or not, and in which format. So the other ideas seem to have received consensus and acceptance. With respect to ISQM1, the conversation will continue, but clearly, and again, we need to be clear, and if it's not clear, we need to make clear. And for me, this is something that we cannot avoid. And as I said, listening to rich channels it seems obvious, but apparently it is not. And if it's not, so we need to clarify. That's our responsibility. I think that's the conclusion here, and that we will continue working. And my question is again, but we'll see, is that I still think that we need to find different ways of approaching stakeholders on this topic. That's doing just the same as we have been doing will probably not work, but of course we will keep on trying to find different ways of doing this and bringing stakeholders with us in this journey, which is actually what we are trying to do. And bringing with us does not mean agreeing on everything at all. It means collaborating actively in doing the best out of this project, or making the best out of this project. So I think that for this part of the outreach or in NAM, in the materials, initiatives, etc., that's it. I don't know if anyone wants to add something here. Ken?
Chair, if this brings us to the close of the discussion on firm culture and governance, I think that we are at this stage. Is there anything else that the project team would like to raise at this point? No. In that case, what I'd maybe give a bit of a heads up to the board is that there is a virtual board call scheduled on October 24th. It's a 3-hour call. And my suggestion at this stage, and we can confirm this after further discussion in the planning committee, is to come back to the board with maybe 2 of the 3 viewpoints that would be a bit further advanced before we get to the December board meeting, to allow the board an early opportunity to provide further input to the project team before we move further ahead on the viewpoints.
And that's a very good idea. So we were supposed not to break now. But we are late, and we still have a few things to do today. So let's move with the next topic, which is the CFO project, right? Thank you very much, FCG team, in October we will come back to this topic. Now, on the CFO, we had a discussion this week about the proposed terms of reference for this new project. There were some good comments from the board. I reiterated that I think that we are very well positioned to move with this project, well, we'll hear from John, but I'm sure that we'll be very close to the final terms of reference and letting the project team work, which they have been doing already. So, John, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gabrielle, and good morning, everyone. So as you're aware, we had the discussion on Tuesday, and thank you very much for the very robust discussion. So we're just coming back now. We sent around yesterday thanks, Jeff. Updates to the terms of reference, taking on board the comments from the board on Tuesday. So we'll just go through, I'm going to pass to Carla in a moment, and she's going to go through a summary of the board feedback and then how we've addressed those, and then we'll seek approval on the terms of reference. So I'll pass over to you now, Carla, when you're ready.
Thank you, John. As John mentioned, the project team summarized this feedback based on the key points, which I'll summarize and walk the board through right now. And in the spirit of the SMART framework, the project team did try to keep the slides to 5 and minimal acronyms, although we did have more than 5 points to cover, so that will take us to just over 6 slides. So on the first matter is the question on terminology and scope refinement, whether the term CFO is too narrow or misleading in certain jurisdictions as drafted. Not all organization has a CFO by title. In some cases, senior finance role may be a vice president of finance or a director of finance. Several board members also asked whether divisional CFOs and whether they fall into the scope as the CFO as defined in the draft terms of reference. So to clarify, the project team intends to focus on the most senior finance professional in organization and is that person with the overall finance responsibility. So to that extent, to avoid excluding individuals who carry equivalent responsibilities, The project team have broadened the scope to refer to CFO and equivalent senior finance role, and this is revised through the draft terms of reference document. The first change I see in paragraph 1 itself. The project team has also added a footnote to clarify the extent of influence these individuals have within the organizations. Now, I'll take the board through the remaining of the matters before I hand it to John and David if they want to chime in on any of these matters. So the next one, on the next slide, please. There was a discussion of the role of non-PAs in CFO roles. The initial Pulse survey did review significant number of CFOs who are non-PAs. And as Luigi and other members emphasized, this raises the fundamental question about whether the code is fit for purpose if it only applies to minority of individuals in these roles. And as John underlined during the presentation on Monday, the project team is at its fact-finding stage. We will examine the matter and report back to the board in due course to discuss the exploration of options that will balance both public interest and the feasibility of the next step within the remit of this board. So what that means is the terms of reference now does make reference to non-PAs, and the project team will gather evidence and use that data to inform whether ethical expectations should, in future, be harmonized across among PA and non-PA CFOs while recognizing the remit of this board. Next slide, please. The other area of feedback was in relation to the Pulse survey findings. Some members expressed that the survey sample size was weighted towards certain jurisdiction, and there was a particular mention whether national nuances might explain or could explain the high percentage of non-PAs in the role of CFO and equivalent senior finance role. Ken and David on Monday did remind us not to overstate the evidence base. It is the first Pulse survey. It is not a global picture, and the project team will undertake further research to gain deeper understanding of the landscape. And the next slide, please. On possible education awareness gaps, one of the most striking findings from our Pulse survey was that 38% of PAs reported being unaware of the IESBA code. Now, during the discussion on Monday, Chana did stress that this is a real wake-up call. Even if it's 40% of PAs, that awareness and education gap is quite significant. Ken did add during the discussion that we need to define exactly where the gap is, whether it's awareness, applicability of PAO membership status before we can attribute further courses. So to assure the board, the project team is committed to raising awareness of the IESBA code as part of its outreach activities. Next slide, please. On corporate governance code and legal requirements, as Christelle mentioned, CFOs do not operate in isolation. In many jurisdictions, the responsibilities are also defined by corporate governance codes and legal frameworks. Rania did request the project team to look specifically at the public sector, where senior finance roles often carry no certification requirements. Nancy also added that we should map enforcement and oversight mechanisms for non-PAs, as well as understand the barriers to being a PA in some jurisdiction. So as a result, the project team now expanded the focus section in the draft term from reference to include this particular focus. The project team will examine whether the IESBA code is consistent with or interact with local jurisdiction, governance code, and legal requirements. And lastly, on the last slide, as promised, the project team also made further drafting requirements on some areas, which is explicit reference to CFO associations in the stakeholder list, making sure there's consistency between sections B and D, clarification of the scope language, and other minor drafting issues. I'll pause here to see if both John and David anything else to add before I take the board through the actual terms of reference document itself. Thank you.
No, nothing to add. Oh, sorry, one minor thing, actually. Sorry, Carla. There was, I think, a comment from Paul about the stakeholder or the stakeholder list as to whether it incorporated all stakeholders or whether it was too broad. We didn't make an amendment to that because the lead into that list of stakeholders talks about that we may reach out. So it's not that we will necessarily reach out to all of them, but it's also not intended to be an exhaustive list as well. So I just wanted to point that one out as well. Cool. So we'll pass back to you, Carla.
Thank you, John. I will now present the screen on the draft terms of reference, and I recommend to the board that we will go through the revisions and pause if there's any comments on the document. Can you see my screen?
No, not very well. Can we remove the slides? Is that possible? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Carla, just zoom in a little bit. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
So as mentioned previously, we made further changes to clarify the role of the CFO and equivalent senior finance role, with the footnote to clarify the responsibilities within an organization. I'll just go through the document paragraph by paragraph, and please, John, would you signal to me if I need to pause at any point? In paragraph 5, we've clarified the further focus on non-PAs as mentioned in terms of addressing the feedback from the board. And as well as the last paragraph that speaks to understanding the extending of the impact of the code to all preparers of financial and sustainability information. During the discussion on Monday, there was a question, I believe, from Nancy that requested the project team to clarify whether it's private or public sector. So we've added the additional reference to private sector here. And the others is minor editorial refinements that the project team made to clarify some of these objectives. In paragraph 7, the project team made further refinement in terms of if there is a need to look at commissioning a NAM and other initiative as discussed during the board meeting on Monday. And paragraph 9 is in reference to the refinement in terms of addressing the matter on corporate governance codes and understanding legal requirements that might supplement or interact with the code. And the project team also added further requirement to clarify CFO associations, so not just CFOs individuals. And that pretty much takes us to the end of the document.
Okay, thank you, Carla. I guess we'll pause there and just see if there's any comments or from any of the board members on the amendments to the terms of reference.
Thank you, Chair. I love these microphones. I just want to add a couple of things in addition to what John and what Carla have gone through, just so you have context. So in one of the footnotes, we refer to the scope of work or the scope of responsibilities in particular that a CFO has. And you'll notice, because I want to point it out, so there's nothing that you're not aware of, we said it may include. Because if you think about the role of a CFO in a multinational, they absolutely do not have full scope of work for legal technology. I mean, they're very distinct functions. And as you move through the spectrum of organizations down to small enterprises, they've often got responsibility for a whole lot of things. So we included, so basically that list, just so you've got context, also comes out of NOCLAR. But we've said may, because we recognize that there are differences between organizational types. So I want you to just be aware of why we did that. In addition, I also wanted to point out that when we talk about CFO associations, that'll be the mechanism through which we get to the CFOs. So it's less about serving them per se, it's about being able to access the membership, which are effectively the CFOs in organizations that ultimately we're targeting. So I just wanted to add those couple of points so that you had that context. We also, of course, raised very clearly the proverbial elephant in the room, which is what do you do with non-PAs? And I think as we all agree, it's something that needs to be discussed at the board level, and we'll need to at some point make a decision, but that's not something that we're going to solve today. But certainly we'll be making sure that when we have the data and we do this further detailed survey, that we'll be distinguishing and capturing data around who's a PA and who's not a PA, so that we've got the full context of any recommendations that come back to the board. So I just wanted to add those few pieces just to make sure that those were clear, because they're really important aspects. So I'll leave it to, if any of you have questions or comments, please feel free. If not, John, I'll hand it back to you to Rich.
Yeah, sorry, David, I'm a little lost. I just searched the document and the only use of the word may is in paragraph 12, and that's not the list of conduct. So I don't know where you were talking about where you used may.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Rich. What David was referring to is in the footnote 1, the second sentence there. In an earlier draft, we had say may be able to exert, but Ken made an edit to say are able to exert, because it's not talking about one singular CFO. It's like CFOs are able to exert over those particular things. And it was also to align with the wording from, because we took some of that wording from paragraph 260.11A1 around no class. So it was just to align it to that. But it's also to say that, yes, as you're exactly right, one CFO may not be able to do that, but collectively they do have influence over those things, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely, it makes sense. It's just keep in mind that we're not isolating down CFOs to those that only have those responsibilities. So there'll be a spectrum is really the point that we're trying to emphasize. So we keep the population as wide and diverse as possible, and we don't narrow it down to something where it loses context or sense. So thank you for clarifying that, Rich, and John for clarifying we had a word change.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or suggestions? Well, if not, thank you very much, project team. And David, as a board advisor, I think that you are very well positioned to start. I know that you have already started, but now officially with the terms of reference approved. Is everyone in agreement with the terms of reference as they are now with these amendments? You don't need to. Sorry? No. Rich is showing his hand that he's in agreement. You don't need to. I mean, I was just asking if there was anyone who was not in agreement. So I think that we can consider these terms of reference approved. Right? Okay. Congratulations and good luck for what comes next. Well, we have a little bit of time, like we had imagined, because we are not going back to the sustainability terms of reference because it has been approved. So we will use this time to go back to CAM. because yesterday the conversation on nuclear and the restructured code was a little bit tight and packed. So it's good that we have this time. It's another important, very important project that it's actually it's two, which are starting, and we need to be sure that Cam and Joanna will be as well positioned to start as the project team on the CFO. So Cam, thank you very much, and sorry for the very limited time you had yesterday for everything that you had to say, but please use these 15 minutes or something, or 20 minutes in the best way possible. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. So yesterday, thank you, board members, also for all your comments yesterday on the PRR approach. With the board advisors, Joanna and Ken, we met briefly after the workshop yesterday to run through the comments. So we'd like to just take the chance to address them now in this, and also run through the next steps of what we plan. So this is a summary of the key comments received. So they include obtaining evidence of effective implementation. As Amarjit and Tomoyo also mentioned, it's going further than just obtaining survey responses, but really getting evidence to determine whether or not the standard has been effectively implemented. We definitely agree. We have to go a step further than just reviewing survey responses. And this includes speaking with regulators and enforcement bodies to understand how they enforce the standard and obtain data about their enforcement. However, we do want to caution that this needs to be balanced with the practical aspects of what we can actually obtain in reality quantitatively, as opposed to some of the more qualitative aspects of understanding the implementation of the standard and how effective it has been through outreach and the data and case studies that regulators, enforcement bodies, and those users can provide us. There was also a comment on understanding the impact of the standard from Rania. So, for example, the data on the number of times PA has escalated or reported the NOCLAR, the types of NOCLAR being reported, whether and how it's been successfully escalated or successful in preventing the type of NOCLAR. We do agree this is very important to understand. And when we develop and draft the questions to the survey, we will be requesting such information from the respondents to the survey, and also during targeted outreach, we will be asking such questions and trying to obtain these data. Obviously, the survey will have to be shared and distributed across various stakeholder groups. So we do need to identify the appropriate stakeholder groups to reach out to, as Amarjit pointed out yesterday. And we will be designing the survey so that each stakeholder group has their specific sets of questions. So not only pertaining to those who legislate or adopt the use of a standard, but those who implement or apply it, and those who it impacts, such as the ultimate users, beneficiaries. It could be those charged with governance as well. So we will reach out to a broad range of stakeholders and draft the questions in a tailored and specific manner. Also a comment on understanding the practices of implementation in each jurisdiction, including whether or not jurisdictions have been utilizing the disclosure of a matter to a public authority. This was raised by Yohei yesterday, and this is also linked to comments by various board members about understanding the nuances of adoption. So, for example, whether or not there were carve-outs when adopting the NOCLAR standard and why. This was raised by Amarjit, Chana, and Vanya. That's absolutely what we intend to do. Again, the survey will be designed to obtain this information, and also in targeted outreach, this will be further understood. Obviously, whatever evidence, whatever information that already exists from jurisdictional standard setters online, etc., we will continue to look at this. As I mentioned earlier, we will be tailoring the drafting of the questions to specific stakeholder groups. So, for example, David mentioned the PAIB group, and this should be drafted in for example, a different manner than those directed to auditors, and we will do that. Allowing that safe space to provide feedback on potentially their experiences. We believe this can be done quite well through targeted outreach as well, where it doesn't have to be all written, etc. Per se. In terms of the timing, and also cognizant of what Luigi mentioned in just the previous session, previously we had proposed a timing of possibly 90 to 120 days, released in January. We'll, of course, coordinate this across our internal team, each project team here, and also with the IEESB to just make sure that while we're not taking too long for a comment period, we do allow time for stakeholders, and also we're not overwhelming stakeholders. So we'll come back to the board in December with this. And also, so now this is comment number 7 here. You also raised whether or not the PIR would cover recent feedback with respect to the length and understandability of the code. What the PIR will cover with respect to the structure project is whether or not that structure project had achieved its original purpose, which really was to improve the structure, readability, and usability of the code. So here I just want to emphasize, we want to emphasize that it will not cover what might be perceived as the complexity of the code in terms of content or rigor or that sort of aspect. It's structure, readability, and usability. So next steps here, and I apologize, we're not going to bring back in December 2026. It's actually in 3 months' time, in December 2025. We will discuss the draft public survey questions with the board, make sure that everyone's comfortable and we can have your input and feedback when finalizing this survey. As I mentioned before, the comment period, we will coordinate and achieve the appropriate timeframe. We'll propose in December again. At the moment, we've said releasing it in January 2026 and targeted outreach with respect to this survey over the period of Q1 and Q2. So the online survey will be designed in a way that it's customized to content. So if stakeholders only want to respond to one PIR, whether it is on their structured code only or NOCAR or both, they can select and do so. It's also tailored to stakeholder group. Again, you can select your stakeholder group and those specific tailored questions will show up. The questions will also be developed to address adoption, enforcement, and impact, really understanding aspects of those. So here I'll pause and see if there's any comments or views and pass it back to you, Chair. Yeah.
Cam and Joanna, for the work that you have done, and for the presentation, very clear. Amajit.
Very quick comment. So I think it looks so much better now, the way you outlined the improvements that have been proposed. I just have one small suggestion. You could also look at, there are various assessment tools which different standard setting bodies have been deploying, including IESCO, FSP, IEA, IES. And we detailed some of those things in our A&I strategy document. There's an annexure to the strategy document which talks about how other organizations are undertaking assessments. And you may find some tips, here and there. So that could be useful for your work. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is excellent. We are fully supporting that. And I can offer Brazil for the outreach in January. We would love to start discussing that as early as possible. Thank you.
Vanya, any other comments? Is the board comfortable? Ken, please.
Perhaps one question to Amajit, just to ask Amajit if you could clarify your comment. And I wasn't sure if you meant, or maybe I misheard, that your suggestion was to consider how other organizations have done the PIRs and see if you have any advice, tips Was this your comment?
There are different tools which like IESCO has, I can maybe share some experience from IESCO. So we started with thematic reviews. Thematic reviews are intense. You pick a theme and run it across different jurisdictions. We also tried country reviews. We did Sri Lanka, and but it was very resource intensive. And this was a full scale assessment, just like IMF, World Bank, on those lines. So IESCO decided to not pursue country reviews because of the resource intensiveness. Then we came up with something called ISIM, where it was a survey-based assessment, but focused on gathering evidence, detecting gaps in different jurisdictions, and also identifying good practices. In case some jurisdiction has a good practice, without doing any benchmarking, without saying you are implemented, not implemented, because their jurisdictions have problems. They say, they don't agree with the rating and so on. So it was more focused on gaps and good practices. So similarly, international insurance standard setting body, they have their own tools. FSB, Financial Stability Board, did number of assessments after the global financial crisis. Some of them were very rigorous, some of them were just survey based. So there are different shades and varieties of tools which are available. So what I was saying was, just take a look at those. You might find some, tips here and there to improve our work. So that's all.
Thank you very much, Amarjit. No, this is one of the couple of comments I wanted to raise. In fact, your idea of looking at what organizations have done, in fact, connects into our discussion yesterday in the workshop. So I was going to raise our discussion on SMART, and even though there's more work to be done at the staff level to come to the board in December with an articulation of the methodology to SMART and let's say techniques and approaches to how we could achieve targeted connectivity with stakeholders, mobilization, and so forth. My encouragement to the team would be to precisely think a bit about what you've suggested and to think a bit outside the box, because whilst the primary means to collect the information that's going to be needed is going to be the online survey, there may be different ways or different techniques to use to actually make those connections with the stakeholders with whom we'd like to have a conversation with. And your idea of looking at what others have done is, in fact, a very good suggestion. So let's not reinvent the wheel. If there are others who've been through this journey and have explored different approaches and tools, etc., well, maybe we can, let's not be ashamed of just borrowing others' ideas and deploy those in this PIR. But my other comment was more on the timing of the PIR. And I was making connection to Reggie's comment earlier, which is that we run the risk here that and there's going to be a level of concern from on the receiving end of our stakeholders, the firms, the POs, or regulators, even the regulators, about a number of documents that will come out from IESBA, our stakeholders, the firms, the POs, or regulators, even the regulators, about a number of documents that will come out from IESBA in the first quarter. There's going to be the PIRs, then there will be the strategy and work plan consultation, not the consultation paper, but the survey. Of course, the viewpoints on federal culture and governance. So there's going to be a number of very substantive documents that will come out and on which the board would like to really hear from stakeholders. So maybe we don't try to solve this, but maybe there's a bit of a discussion to be had at the level of the planning committee would be my suggestion, just to see what would be the kind of the practical way to approach this conundrum. that yes, there's going to be a need to collect the information, and the sooner the better. But how best to do it in a way that will be well received by stakeholders. So there's a matter for discussion here.
Thank you, Ken. I think you can guess what my suggestion would be to avoid this problem, which should be to anticipate a few things into 2025. Okay, David, please.
Chair. So the good news is the CFO project won't target the same stakeholder group, so we'll be all right on at least on that one. All joking aside, one comment I did want to make, just an observation on the impact. So one of the things that I was sitting thinking about as you were talking about it was impact relative to what? So you collect the number of reporting, but what's that relative to determine what impact it's had? So how will you get either information from before, so you can say, well, before NOCLAR was in place, perhaps there were 10 that reported. I'm just making up a number. Now, post NOCLAR, there's 20, and those additional 10 have prevented X, Y, Z. So just think about how you're going to contextualize the impact, because to me, the number on its own doesn't really tell a story, but if you put it in context, it will tell a story. And that also might help us more broadly to deal with the views around fatigue on standard setting and how is it really important because there's been no dramatic failure yet, or those kinds of things.
Thank you, David. That's a very valid point. Otherwise, it's basically just numbers, right? So you need the context around that. So to the extent we can, we'll be comparing it to the before and after. Amarjeet, we've definitely noted your suggestion of tips and of other assessment bodies. And Vanya, we would love to be there in person even. But thank you for we'll reach out. And back to you, Chair.
So I can offer you help in India, and I would request other board members also, because this is a little intensive exercise, and if you really want to get a good feel of the ground situation, you need somebody to help you in each jurisdiction. Yeah.
Very much, you all, project team, board advisor, and board, for the very good contributions and for the availability and openness to help with the outreach, which is going to be very important. And Vanya, as always, you have been extremely helpful in that respect. There is already something planned for 2026 in Brazil, for which there was an invitation, so maybe we can connect the two things. So this brings us almost to the end of this part of this session. But before we move with the minutes and all these final things, I'd like to invite Janine. I don't know if Janine is with us, but if Janine is with us, I'd like to invite Janine to say a few words about this meeting or this last session. Hello, Janine.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can very well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to first make a comment from the PIB, on behalf of the PIB, on the post-implementation review project as just discussed. And if that is maybe easier, I can also make some final closing remarks at the same time, or after you have almost finished closed the meeting, Gabriela, that's up to you. But on the post-implementation reviews, I like to say that these are, of course, a very important element of robust due process. And therefore, we as PIB welcome the initial benchmarking and the coordination with the IESBA. And we identified the post-implementation review as an important area to further reflect on in the integrated due process and PIF operating procedures during our own April 25 board meeting. It will also be very valuable to better understand issues around the adoption and implementation of NOCLAR and what are particular stumbling docs to implement more recent versions of the code and what can be done to advance adoption and implementation in these areas. And in our preparation for this meeting, we had for ourselves the question why professional skepticism, applicability and safeguards projects have not been scoped out from the peer. There will be very good reasons for that, but I just wanted to, and we wanted to understand what the reasons are, or if that is foreseen at a later stage, or what the ideas are for this. And here I pause and then wait for further what you want to do, Gabriela. Shall I make some closing remarks going forward, or?
Yes, I think so, Janine, because we will go after this just for the approval of the minutes and the closing remarks from me. So I think that if you want to do your closing remarks yourself now, it's the appropriate time. And then we'll have an executive session, but that is a closed session, so it's important that you make your remarks now.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to congratulate you again with the very good and well-attended conference on Monday, which was, of course, also very informative for the topics that were on the agenda for this meeting. A very good meeting, well led, and very good and valuable discussions, I think. A lot of good work has been done by the board and the staff in preparing both the conference as well as the whole meeting. And also good to say that I also noted that the PIF characteristics were referred to when relevant for exploring gaps that need to be addressed through projects and that were discussed during this meeting. And as I have not yet had the chance to make some comments on the adoption and implementation working group work, and today's discussion on the firm culture and governance discussion, I'd like to make some remarks now. Regarding the work of the implementation and adoption working group, I have not yet commended them on the valuable and impressive work they have been doing and are planning to do going forward. It's particularly important in support of the adoption and implementation of the sustainability standards, and is important for the board to consider how to best respond to important identified adoption and implementation challenges as part of a so-called rapid response mechanism, as the PIOB has highlighted in its published public interest issues document. Regarding the firm culture and governance project, I'd like to give as feedback that I found it a very good discussion about considering things like testing the viewpoints and the why and how of it, as well as concerns that were expressed. It could deliver insights into different good practices as implemented in accounting firms, which can inform the IESBA further in developing relevant practical guidance with good or best practices. Apart from including good practices based on success stories, also stories about what can go wrong and the need for root cause analysis are important, I believe, to learn from through the practical guidance, as well as that continuous improvement mechanisms in firms to drive ethical behaviors in accounting firms are needed, more so as the viewpoints cannot be considered in isolation, but should be taken all together to make a real difference in practice. It's equally important to include in the guidance what factors could contribute to unethical behavior resulting from various governance structures for a profound understanding, leaving the regulation of legal structures to regulators. What was discussed about a paper to link two of the viewpoints to ISQ1, I think that's a good way forward for information purposes to stakeholders, as was also being discussed, as well as for informed decision-making on the continuance of the project, including with a look forward to a framework for standard setting purposes through the code that is the projected outcome of this project. And last point in this area, as we understand, the private equity investments are planned to be addressed in the overarching viewpoint for now, through highlighting the importance of ethical culture, regardless of ownership structure. In our view, it will be important to keep the topic of private equity investments on the radar so that any significant developments are appropriately considered in the future development of the framework, and through including it in this overarching viewpoint, it will, I believe, stay on the radar of the IESBA board, and that's good. So yeah, these were the comments I wanted to express based on some of the projects where I did not yet comment. So yeah, I wish you all yeah, good luck in bringing all these projects further towards the December meeting. It is may well be possible this is my last meeting of IESBA that I observe, as I'm in my last year of my second term. So I wish you also very good, all the best, and very good, a lot of success and good luck with all your ongoing projects, which are very, very important in the public interest. Ethics is really very key and cannot be emphasized and underscored more in the current times. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Janine, for your very kind and insightful as well words. It was good to hear you about all the topics that you had not yet had the opportunity to comment on, and it's noted, and we will take this advice, insights with us for further reflection and work. Thank you for reminding the need to keep private equity on our radar. I mentioned it before, it is my conviction that it's going to become a big topic for the IESBA, because it's not only it's what everyone is wanting to speak about, but it's clear that every day there is something coming to our eyes, which is new, and that we will need to be very attentive. So thank you for that as well. And thank you very much for the time with us. You spent probably 2 or 3 meetings I think with us, but also other side conversations, and thank you warmly for your constructive contribution on all topics, your deep knowledge of everything, which helps a lot, and also for your passion, because we know and we see that this is something that all these matters are things that you are passionate about, and that you like to discuss and contribute. So thank you for everything, and for your independent approach and views about what this board does, as well as to your clear commitment to the public interest. So Janine, we don't know, maybe we'll see each other in December, but whatever happens, you will, in case this is the last meeting, you will have left a piece of you and what you gave us for the future work that we'll be doing. So it's never a goodbye. It's just remaining together in a different way. So thank you for that. We will still see you on the screen today, because we'll have the executive session, but now we'll have to make some decisions, because, well, let's go to the minutes, and then let's see how we organize and manage the meeting. So the minutes had been circulated for comments and suggestions, and have now been finalized. So my question is whether anyone has any question or any comment on the minutes, or if you are comfortable with them. Okay, so thank you very much, and thank you to those who worked on the minutes as well. I'd just like to make a final comment, which I probably should have made during the discussion on farm culture and governance, but this brings me to the minutes, because speaking again about clarity and the commitment, our commitment to be clear and to be transparent and etc. There have been some questions, outside and here, I think here, even here at the board, about what have we decided in June, or where are we leaning with this project. So it seems a little bit strange that we are having this discussion after having had, not discussion, but all the discussion. But I think that it's good that you look at the minutes of the last minute, because I think they are very clear about what we decided in June. It's there, it's written there. So I started, when we started the discussion on farm culture and governance this week, I started by, driving you, taking you through the journey of what we approved in December, what we decided in June. What we approved in December, it's clear, it was a decision to develop a framework as well as develop NAM. In June, we decided to resequence. So, and in the minutes, it's made clear that we did not decide to abandon the project of developing a framework. So that's where we are. What framework, with which characteristics, etc., it's something to be decided in next June, after we go through this journey of collecting more information, hopefully do more research, go deeper into the topics and into the reality that requires this work, so that in June, that framework, it will be clear to us what this framework should look like, where it will sit, if it will sit in the code, outside the code. All these questions are questions that we will need to respond in June, that we were supposed to respond earlier, but that we decided to delay, to do it and make those decisions with more information. So if this wasn't clear, the minutes of the June board meeting, I think that they are very clear about it. And I went there just to see if that was the case. Otherwise, maybe we needed to clarify, but they were clear in that respect since the start. So, and I think it's necessary, even if it was not the topic of this last intervention, I think it's always necessary when possible to make clarifications which make this board comfortable about and clear, and also our stakeholders listening to us, and so that the message is consistent, because there has been apparently sometimes not a very consistent messaging about this. So if anyone asks a board member, what are you doing? That everyone responds the same thing, which is the same thing that I respond, the staff responds, and etc. And that consistency is crucial, first, for the work to be successful, secondly, to create trust in this board and confidence, and that's our approach is transparent and clear, and etc. So this brings us to the end of the substantial part of the meeting and to the closing session. But we should have the OROC member here, who was it's not the president, it's someone from the board who was also yesterday at the dinner. But there may have been some misunderstandings about the timing, so I have been trying to message him, but he's not responding. So I would suggest, Ken, with your agreement, that we break now and that we close the session after the break, and then we go directly to the executive session. Is that okay? Okay. So we will break now for, it was supposed to, sorry? Oh. 30 minutes? Okay, so 30 minutes. Enjoy the break and the cakes. Welcome back to this table for the last public session part. And this is the closing remarks of this meeting and week. We have the pleasure of having with us Mário Freire. Mário Freire, some of you may have met him last night at the castle. Mário was is a board member of OROC. We are former colleagues from CMVM, so we know each other for, I don't know, maybe 15 years, 17, I don't know, a lot. Mário was, of course, Mário and OROC, the ones who invited us for the dinner at the castle that I know that you loved and enjoyed a lot. So thank you very much, Mário, and thank you very much for the support over this, for the preparations of this meeting, the OROC support in terms of some organizational issues and registrations and things like that. So as I said many times, this conference and the meeting in Lisbon would never have been possible without the support of our sponsors. We had them here over the week. We had Paula Frank from OCC on Monday, and then Joana Paz from ISEG on Tuesday, and today in the closing session, Mário is giving us the pleasure of being with us. Mário is also teaching here at the school, right? Am I right? Okay, so we close the circle. And before I go to my own closing remarks, I'd like to give the floor to Mário for him to, say a few words, 2 words to this board, and it's a pleasure, Mário, to have you here with us.
Okay, thank you very much, Gabriela. It was really an honor to host you, at least to support this organization. Since the first day that Gabriela approached us, he says, yes, of course, you have immediately our support. What can I do for having this meeting here in Lisbon? Not because we love to host people outside and come visit to Lisbon. You could see everywhere that we have many people visiting Lisbon and love Lisbon. I hope that you also feel the same feelings and got some experience and good memories when you return home. And return, of course, in the next moment, and either private or in other conference. Really, Gabriela, first of all, I need to say that Gabriela is really so colleague, a friend, and it was a great, resilient person in a way that know that it helps a lot, and your job at IESBA with ethicals for us is very important for a statutory audit point of view as an institute. This is why immediately since the first day we said, of course, this is a topic that embraces us, and you will have an immediate support. It's interesting where, just one point, we have a sentence here in this institute, which when I also took the degree here, and when this is the first day to get these inscriptions and so on, there is a sentence on the wall says, I don't fear the error because I'm always prepared to correct them. I think it's a very important message in the way. That's and another point which is really interesting is that, and it deals with this ethical behavior, is that if you also see, as a statutory auditor, we need to generate trust, no doubt, but you should be trustful. And that is the two concepts very important. And to be trustful, we have a sentence below the name of the institute, which says integrity, independence, and competence. Those three values are the most anchored of a statutory auditor. Without that, no, not at all. We do not support public interest if we don't value those important attributes. And this is ethical behavior. There are many challenges. We know if we look in these uncertain moments, unfortunately we see some examples which would not be a good ethical behavior. The problem is that sometimes it's not the lack of ethic, is each one has his own ethics. That is the problem. And that we need to face. And last but not least, your job is very important because as you focus on principles and define the good principles of what is the right way to act, it's much better than rules. Because if we suddenly see rules, the idea is that in some cases, rules made by politicians or so on, what it's happened, we don't understand very well the principle behind some rules. And then it's very difficult to act behavior because you are just following the rules. It is, okay, it's against the rule, the rule does not treat, so I can do, and forget to apply the principles. If you focus the principles, it should be nature. Your behavior will be nature. And it's very, very important. It will be puzzle if you suddenly start the rules. However, it's necessary to interpret the rules. And there are also on that side, and I will finish because I know that we are at the end of your last session after 1 week. The most important is we will face challenges, and your conference was amazing, Gabriela and IESBA board. Actually, AI, private equity, and other topics that were addressed raise many questions. To be honestly, that's the last sentence very important, is that what will be an audit, what is the vision of audit? The audit will be imbued by technology, but empowered by people. So people need to use skepticism, judgment, and I can tell you, no machine will replace the instinct, the skepticism, and the judgment. It supports us, but not replace. So humans still be the center. The ethical behavior still be a core on that point. And with that, I'm finalized. And thanks a lot for being here. And we will see you again in any time.
Thank you so much, Mario, and thank you so much, Orok. And I'm greeting Orok and thanking Orok in your person. You can stay with us, and you'll be very welcome. If you will take like more 15 minutes, or it's just a closing session, or if you need to go, just go. Okay. So it's going to be a pleasure to have you until the end of the meeting. So, my friends, now it's time to close. I will not take long because it's been an exhausting week for everyone, and I know that you want to go. But I think it's important to say a few words before we go, before we move to the executive closed session. So it's been an intense week. I don't need to say it. I think that everyone feels it in each of your skins. Intense in many perspectives, intensity of work, 5 full days, starting with the conference, intensity of sentiments and emotions, namely starting the week with a conference completely, a room completely full of people, many people attending virtually, so many people from so many jurisdictions, but above all, it's not only about the numbers, it's not only about the amount of people and registrations, it's mostly about how well I think it went, and it's not my merit or our merit, it's the merit of amazing speakers and dedicated people working to make this happen. Also, I think that, and this is for me important to note, that the impact, I'm not going to use the word success because it's probably not on me to assess how successful it was, but the impact of this conference that I mentioned in the first day of this meeting, with an incredible amount of messages and sincere message of congratulations, appreciation, and etc., shows that what we do is important. Shows that people, our audiences, stakeholders, very diverse. There is an appetite for this kind of discussions and topics, which, by the way, do not happen every day. And I would say that it's even rare that there are conferences, opportunities in the financial in the audit and the accounting space to discuss ethics this way with so many diverse stakeholders with so important topics that we addressed. So how it went and how it resonated in our audiences, I think demonstrates that what we do matter. There is curiosity, there is interest, there is a need for discussions and work on ethics and independence. This is very reassuring. I'm not going to speak about the times we went through over the last year or so. It's not that we ever had doubts about it, but it seemed that there was a narrative that's almost pointed in that direction. I think it's clear from what we are doing and the reactions of stakeholders and this conference that it was really necessary. And yes, and I think that someone is already starting to work on the next one, I hope. We don't know when or where. There are some suggestions from Ken, very ambitious ones, by the way. But okay, we'll see what we can do. So this started with the conference, then 4 days of full days of work, and important work, bringing some projects forward from culture and governance, CIVs, collective investment vehicles, to avoid the acronyms, according to the discussions yesterday about the acronyms. Imagining that some people may not know what are CIVs or FCG or PF or PIF or etc. So these two ongoing projects deserved a lot of discussion and attention from this board, and thank you very, very much for the very rigorous comments that you have made, which only demonstrate the level of preparedness for this meeting, which is also impressive. I must say that I had the impression that everyone read the documents, had opinions, identified things that needed improvement, and made some kind of reflection upon the documents, which helped a very strategic discussion here around the board. I must note that it was probably the meeting since I joined the IESBA when we had a lower number of pages to read, right, Ken? I think I had never seen so few documents, and still it shows that not only it helps people reading the documents properly, but also doesn't harm, on the contrary, the strategic nature of the conversations that we have here. And then we started a few things, made important decisions to move forward with a new project on sustainability, making part 4B of the code profession agnostic. Already some reactions I received, and interestingly, not necessarily from the practitioners in the sense or the ones who usually do the work. So I'll share it later probably. And on the CFO project and on the NOCLAR and restructured code PIRs, post-implementation reviews, not to mislead anyone, but also the work on adoption and implementation, which, as Janine mentioned, it's impressive, not only the amount, but the quality of the work that is being done, and the professional and very structured approach to this working group's work. Mario, in case you don't know, last year we decided to create a group, a working group on adoption and implementation of the standards, and this group is doing a very structured and professional work in trying to understand where is the code adopted, where the code is not, mostly with sustainability, that's standards, that's where this is starting, but it's already moving in other areas like the news tech standards, and so to understand where we need to focus more, which are the reasons for non-adoption or less, more slower adoption of the standards, where we need to focus in terms of jurisdictions, stakeholder groups, and etc. And finally, the strategy and work plan for 28, 30, 31. And again, probably, I don't know, many of us, I would say most of us will not be here by that time, but that only adds to our responsibility to give all the attention to this topic and leave a legacy for the next ones who will come after, which truly speaks about the quality of the work of this board. This will take a lot of work in terms of trying to anticipate trends initially together with IESB for this survey, but then following our way in terms of consultation and etc. It's going to be a long journey. I think that this topic will come back to this board almost every board meeting starting now, but we need to do it, and we need to do it in the best way possible. As some of you mentioned, leaving space and room for the unknown, and tomorrow, probably in December, we may be already having a different discussion from the one that we had in September, but also leaving some capacity, as someone mentioned, to deal with this unknown that will come after. So, full week, I'm really and sincerely grateful to this board for the amazing contributions, the seniority, the constructive way you provided all your comments. And what I see here is that each time as a board, we grow and grow in maturity, in strategic approach, etc. I think that what also helps, and to be clear, one of the things that I appreciate the most in this board, together with the quality of the people, experience, etc., it's the honesty of the people here around the table. And that makes everything much easier. When people are honest, fair, and approach everything with integrity. And that's what I see. And I'm not speaking because it's nice to say it. I think that the honesty of the way people behave here around the table makes always things much easier. We had our questions, we had our disagreements, we always achieved, and this was absolutely clear this week, to get to agreements, to make concessions, or to accept that things can be different and not be stuck in our own opinion. So that's great, and gives me the impression that I'm a member of an incredible board, but that I'm among friends, which is also something wonderful. Now, I need to especially, well, of course, I said it at the start, but I'm going to say it again. I couldn't be happier for having the possibility, the opportunity of organizing this meeting in Lisbon and having you here in my hometown, in this city that I think that you enjoyed, and I hope you will take good memories of it when you go. It was something that, you know, at least some of you know, that I was trying to do for some time already. It wasn't easy, of course, but the best things are those which do not come as easy in our plate. Of course, it was not my, my big thing, because fortunately we had the help. I had the help, and we had the support of many people and organizations who made this possible. And this brings me first to thank again the sponsors of this of the conference and meeting, OROC, here represented by Mario, OCC, and ISEC, offering us this beautiful space to meet, and all the support for everything to go well. So these are the first ones I'd like to thank. I'd like to, of course, thank the ones who were working, you know, not that much visible, but helped everything work. The ones, you know, the people of the AV, audio visuals, some of them, I think they are still there from Infrasound. Also the catering, which I think you enjoyed, and it was impeccable in terms of assistants and etc., provided by Coisas em Festa. I think it's the name of the company. So thank you to all of them, and to the ISEG marketing and communications team, who were amazing, walking with us over the last many months. I think that we spoke with them, I don't know, but it was probably 6 months ago or something like that, and who were unstoppable in terms of making everything happen for us, meeting with us on weekends, on Saturdays here, etc. So really, I want to thank Elena Laime, the director. I think that she's not here, but anyway, Elena Laime, Paula, Sandro, Paulo, the team from ISEC, who worked with us over these months to make all this possible. I want to thank, of course, the board and the staff. for everything, for making it possible, for your openness to come to Lisbon instead of New York and change a little bit the setup and, accept also that things were not exactly like you were used to in some of the elements and details of this meeting. The board has been amazingly open to different approaches and supportive, even when some details do not go that well. And to the staff, of course, who was behind everything, namely the conference. And I really need to thank them publicly, because the effort of this team over the last times to make this happen was beyond anything that we could have expected. Of course, the communications team was particularly busy and critical to make this happen. And here I want to thank specifically Rui, Astrid, Dave Johnson, and Diana. She's not from the communications team, but she was 100% involved. But then there were behind the scenes, and maybe you haven't seen them, but there were staff members supporting each one of the panels. There were staff members supporting the budget, which was not a small thing. There were staff members connecting with the people. So the staff was, in a way or another, all involved in this project. And even those who were not so directly involved, they were, because they were supporting the others, making room for the others to be involved in this and taking more on them on other areas. It was heavy for everyone. It was a very hot and busy summer for everyone. But I hope, and this is my hope, that the achievement of this conference and of this meeting in Lisbon will make everyone feel that it was worth, and that's working together in a completely different manner. It's also worth for us to grow as a team. Speaking about working in a different way, I need to mention the workshop yesterday, the SMART. It was a almost last minute decision to use the time of the Thursday afternoon instead of going out and have some fun, have fun or try to have fun in a different and more productive way. It's not that we did not want you to go around in Lisbon, but we had some social opportunities over the week. So we thought at this time we could get together in a different way, also because we were going to have the dinner offered by Oroc, so we could use the time that way. I hope that you enjoyed. I received some very good feedback from some board members. I hope it's the case for all of you. First, I think it was funny. It was a little bit chaotic at a certain moment, but that was funny as well because it makes us less formal. Secondly, it is important, I think, that sometimes, from time to time, the board, the staff, technical advisors work together in a completely different way, closer, lighter, but at the same time allowing to create those relationships between people, which makes the work so much easy and makes it so much easier to get agreements, responses, and etc. That was also the purpose. The third thing, of course, the SMART and Mario. SMART is a framework that we are preparing to make our work smarter for stakeholders, not for us. Well, if possible, also for us. And SMART stands for simplification, mobilization, adoption, responsiveness, and target. So what we are trying to do is to create a framework which in the future will be embedded in everything we do, and that we need to test and pilot against these 5 pillars to see if what we do is really for the benefit of simplification, responsiveness, adoption, etc., etc. So this is a clear response already to some suggestions and advice that we have been receiving to change a little bit the way we work, mostly in a time where the participation of some stakeholders is becoming a little bit different as we go and move to a staff-driven model. So we need to find creative ways of make sure that the board is involved on the one hand, and that we respond, and that the board is involved, that stakeholders are involved and feel engaged and included, which is an important word, and that we respond properly to their needs and to their requests. So I have to thank also to the team who was behind this, and it was, there were a few things, a heavy lift and effort over the last days before this conference on the SMART as well, which was very important, but also very difficult. Thank you again, Rui. Carla is unfortunately not with us, but I hope that she's listening. And Joanne sitting behind. The three of you, thank you very much, with the support of the communications team once more, and of the broader team. Ken, of course, I did not mention you, but Ken is always, as you know, behind of everything. Sorry? Yeah, Rui, I have already thanked Rui, but of course, these two gentlemen were very much busy, to say the least, over the last times with all this. So yeah, this brings me probably to the end. I'm really happy that it was possible to make this happen. I hope you enjoyed the meeting, the conference, the social opportunities since the first day, last Sunday, until today, that it will bring some good memories with you home when you go. And let me wish everyone safe travels. Well, we'll see us in the executive session, but since this is the open session, thank you very much, and thank you for making this happen this way. Thank you. So, we will now say goodbye to Mario, thanking him again, and I will kindly ask the observers to please leave the room, since we are about to start the executive session.